Welcome to Tavern Ramblings, Session 6, Episode 6, whatever you want to call it. I'm John, and I'm brought to you with also...
I'm Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
And we're from Lizards Locations, if you haven't checked us out yet. But today, it's been a minute since we filmed our last Tavern Ramblings.
Just in case you haven't picked up on that, if anyone's actually been listening to these things at the moment.
Yeah.
But, you know, time is a construct of man, so what can you do?
Yeah. Today I have an interesting one. We're stepping away from playtests, right? And we're going to look at house rules.
And I'm so excited for when those playtests come to like D&D Beyond, so we don't have to keep like scrounging up pieces of paper to like get all these information things. But it's like, because we've been trying to do the playtest in our actual games, and it's just like, oh, where is it? Like, well, we can't look at it on D&D Beyond, so we gotta like ruffle through some papers that we printed out.
Yeah. Did you see that next week, by the way, they're starting an hour deep dive into like elements of the player's handbook that's officially being released?
No, I didn't hear about that. That's interesting. I'll have to check that out.
I think it's the 18th, but I can't remember like what specifically date it is. But they're going to do an hour deep dive into some of the mechanic changes, an hour deep dive into each class, and they're going to release those periodically from next week until the release of the player's handbook.
Wow. Okay.
So that'd be cool. And I think they're doing alphabetical for classes, so that
that's usually how they do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, just reading the player's handbook to us.
Yeah. Right. So that would be really cool. I would assume probably Jeremy Crawford or someone along those lines will be part of that.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to be doing today. So you and I, we DM most of the Lizards and Locations stuff.
And it's not a one-shot we DM, yeah.
Yeah, and so we have similar things and we have things that are kind of different. So I think we're going to enjoy picking each other's brains about why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Because we both enjoy playing each other's games too, so that's kind of fun.
Absolutely.
So let's start with one of the ones I like that you do is the I know a guy.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
The I know a guy is basically it's tertiarily a mechanics thing, but it's mostly for having a lore-based reason why, like, if you're stuck on something, because it basically gives your party the ability to have whatever makeup you want. Like, if you want 4 bards and to be a rock band, like, you can do that with a Noah guy, because like, oh, I know this person who, you know, is more of a religious person because my character isn't. It just allows players to do what they want to and have a way to fix anything that comes up in a campaign, because as much as 4 bards sounds like fun, it might not work with like the specific story the DM is trying to tell, or like there might be a specific thing that happens because the players take it in their own little weird way, and it becomes a thing where like, oh, well, we've just kind of played ourselves into this situation which isn't either fun or like logically sound. So it just gives somebody a little bit of an out.
Yeah, charisma modifier.
Your charisma modifier, you have that many guys, quote unquote, that it could be any person. It's just it's just the I know a guy is just the colloquial term for a thing, because you know, Pawn Stars is funny.
Yeah, and I think it's a minimum of 1 is what you do, right? So like someone like Hoagie, who has a charisma of 6, he'll have one person. Yeah,
it's minimum 1. Absolutely. There's no like you don't know negative people. That doesn't make any sense. And not giving somebody 1 is like, okay, that's kind of silly. But if somebody, you know, like Saphira has 5, who not everyone has, I don't think anyone's seen Saphira yet, but you will.
Yeah. You
will. She got +5, so like she knows whoever the hell she wants to, because that's just how charisma works usually. Yeah,
and I'm always excited because, you know, we use them few and far between. Like we save them for a rainy day sometimes. And we've seen some cool ones that just come out of the natural narrative. Like I'm thinking Mass Effect. I didn't use it for Strixhaven, but for Mass Effect I used it, and I introduced this Asari Alanis risk control. Yeah, ERCS person, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, I'll make that one of my I know guy people. Mm-hmm. So we've seen it kind of happen organically like that, which was really cool. A big one that we've seen a lot is in your Pillars campaign. Dez has their deputy, right? I want to say their deputy is one of the I know guys.
Yes, that was one of the people that she is able to go to like get information about certain things that she wouldn't necessarily know about.
Yeah, is it like Langston Chalk or something like that?
That's his name, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's been pretty cool. Like, I didn't use it for Strixhaven because I wasn't familiar with it as much, but in the Pillars campaign, that's come up quite a bit. And then I stole it from Mass Effect because I like it so much, because it kind of helps a player sometimes when you're in a bind. It can also be like a nice little crutch to throw their way as a DM, right? Like, okay, you guys are stuck. Hey, there's this person, you know, that you might be able to contact with.
For sure.
I would assume Hoagie would probably reserve his for, you know, the mercenary group he came from. You know, that would make sense for someone for him, or maybe a family member.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things too, because like the more people you add to the campaign, the more like weird things that can happen, the more plot twists I can add into, the more things I can. Because like Langston Chalk was I know a guy type of thing, and I used him as a plot hook to get Des to where I wanted her to go. Like, it's just such a great thing to like, let your players make characters that aren't necessarily just their player characters and put them into this world that you're making for them. And you're going to enjoy it. They're going to think that, like, they're going to be like, oh, the thing that I did is, you know, paying off, because it's just a fun thing for people to do. It's a good little collaborative storytelling.
Yeah, and I think that's so big about it, right? You know, the idea of I Know a Guy is bringing in more fleshing out of their backgrounds and their stories, which makes the player think that they, and rightfully so, that they have a story to tell as well, right?
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite ones that we've added in. Another one I keep stealing from you is the random encounters. I did use this as well for Strix now. I introduced it like halfway into Strix, but I used it for Mass Effect. And I kind of wanted to talk about random encounters because there's quite a few ways you can do it. You could go literally like the word says, random encounters, right? Or you could do it kind of like I do, and I don't know. I'd actually like to ask you. What I do is I plan out about 10 different scenarios based on what I think could happen, right? And I have those somewhat prepped, or some more fleshed out more than others if they're more story-based, right? Random encounters that could happen. But I have those kind of set aside, and if you guys roll the number, and we'll talk about that in a second, how it works, you know, then I pulled out one of those stories based on the scenario you guys find yourselves in. Is yours more random, or is it more planned ahead?
It's a bit more planned ahead for me. Like, the random encounters I have for you guys are always situational dependent. Like, I have like one or two each time I'm going in. Like, okay, like I know more or less what you guys are going to do during the course of the campaign most of the time. If it's one of those times where your guys are like in downtime and you roll a random encounter, I might go a little bit more random when the time comes for that. But at the moment, every time you guys have rolled a random encounter, it's like, okay, if they do a random encounter, it's going to be this. It's going to be this one thing. Like, yeah. So like, yeah, it's and you know, one of the random encounters like almost killed one of our characters.
Yeah, the singularity thing, right?
Yeah, like you guys ran into like an abomination, like an Eldritch abomination that was fighting a solar drake, and it turned into this little encounter with a singularity. It was a big freaking thing, and it was a big emotional beat actually that wasn't planned. I didn't think it was going to happen, but through a combination of just some people running out of ways to heal themselves or whatever is happening, it turned into a very emotional and a very scary situation for everybody.
Yeah, and in that Roy episode, what was cool about it was, and I don't have eyes on what's going on with one of the players, so it's like John, know that they went down. I can't do anything because my character doesn't know, you know, and it creates this suspense, you know, you know, that became really real for us as players too. It's like, oh shit, you know, and it involved, you know, in that campaign, the four players, two of them are, you know, they're both married couples, and they're playing couples in the game, and so like it gets really real quick, you know. It was honestly, I like those kind of moments, you know, that come out of that.
Yeah, even if sometimes people get upset with me personally that I want to make those kind of high emotion, like reactionary type of things. Like I want people to react, I want people to do these things. It's one of those things we can talk about a little bit more once we get into like more of like our styles of DMing, which is not necessarily the subject of this conversation, but like that situation also had, you know, 2 or 3 other house rules that we'll get into. But yeah, it's the random encounter ones before we you know, diverge and digress everywhere. Yeah. Basically, the mechanics of it are whenever you're doing either a long rest or a short rest, or you're traveling or something that's happening where it's like considered downtime or not necessarily like something that anybody. It's not like you're taking time off. It's like you're doing something that might somehow put you in danger. What you'll do is I'll have everybody roll a d12, and then I will also roll a d12, and if anyone matches the number that I rolled, then a random encounter starts. And if anybody rolls the same number, they re-roll. Everyone has to, like, there's a basically like there's a 1 in 4th chance that it happens, and it feels like it happens a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Like it feels like we have it like half the time, but statistically speaking, it's like a 25% chance that a random encounter happens anytime you roll a random encounter.
Yeah, and what's cool about those too is, you know, as a DM, based on prior decisions they did, you can make the stakes higher or lower. So, for example, you know, if they're really exhausted, you know, or something like that, you can be like, okay, I'm going to make this easier to get a random encounter, I'm going to make this harder to get a random encounter because you guys have already done so much. You know, you as a DM...
You could do that.
You can,
I personally have not done that, but
yeah,
you could do that.
I know we've done the advantage thing where essentially we roll 2 dice, right? And I think that was because we were doing something super dangerous, right? Or we were doing something foolhardy, you know? So we were like, okay, roll 2 dice, both those numbers. Now, out of 4 players, that's 8 chances out of the 12, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, that was a you guys were doing some silly shit.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Somebody has to.
Yeah. What's cool about it is we've taken the word encounter and really evolved what encounter means. So an encounter means something has happened, the stakes are higher, something's going on, you have to act, and that could be a battle, or it can be like a singularity event. Or I think I had in Strixhaven the exploding penguins have gone missing, and you had to go, you know, find them and deactivate in resources.
Yeah, it's just an event. Like encounter is not necessarily specific to combat. Yeah.
So that's been nice to see. Like I said, I've done the penguin one. I also did one with. It was in Strixhaven. Aurora. She was trying to do a gig at the Fire Jolt, and you guys assisted her with collecting tips and like getting people to be a part of it, which was hilarious because it was the one time Nate was rolling really low on performance checks ever.
Yeah, everyone was rolling really badly on their performance. It was like, what is happening?
Yeah, but it became this really interesting scene, and we just rolled with it, you know. But yeah, so I like the random encounters quite a bit. Another one that I've done that it's interesting because it can kind of change the way a battle goes out is the initiative one. So if you roll a nat 20, the mechanic is if you roll a natural 20 on the initiative, you get a surprise round. So you get to go first and you can do everything you want, and then the round actually happens. If you roll a natural 1, you essentially take like the stun condition for the first round.
Yeah.
And so it can greatly help a battle, as in like if you're a caster, get some really big fucking spells out, you know? Or it can screw you over. It screwed over Mary a couple times with her rolling a natural 1, and she's just been knocked out for the first. It was actually happened. I don't know if you remember, it was our first session in Mass Effect. I had you guys all in different areas of the ship.
Yeah.
And you guys each had an encounter going on, and she rolled a natural 1 against 2 Loki mechs. So she was getting fucked up as a level 1 character.
As a level 1, like not even a combat character. She's a level 1 support character, and like, oh boy.
Yeah, so that was like, oh shit, and she was like, well, this character might have a quick story here.
Also, I'm pretty sure we started at level 3 for that campaign.
It might have been level 3. Yeah. I think we did because it's a shorter campaign.
The only one we've started at level 1 so far that I remember is Strixhaven, and that did not last very long. So.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I mean, level 1 doesn't last that long anyway.
That's fair. Yeah, that's the only time I think we've ever started level 1.
Yeah.
But still, you know, it was a fairly perilous situation, and rolling 1 is just a bad time, and this makes it even worse. And it's funny that you do this for, like, you have this one where you have the initiative critical misses and critical hits, and then I have the one where critical misses are like a thing that I do, but I don't think I've ever seen you do a critical miss.
Oh, so I do critical ones as well, but I don't have them re-roll. It's just always bad.
Okay.
Yeah, so you guys don't usually roll natural ones when you guys attack, for whatever reason. But I have had us do it for natural ones on saves, and usually something bad happens. But I also hold my monsters like you do as well. I hold them accountable as well. So I've had like person roll natural one, so you get an opportunity attack, right? You know, kind of thing. Yeah, so I just don't do the reroll. It's just immediate. Like, a natural one is a natural one.
Yeah, and for context, the reroll I'm talking about is if my characters or anybody rolls a natural one, they roll again, and if they would have hit on the second roll, it's not like a massive thing. It's not like, you just miss. Like, it's still a miss. There's no way to recover and hit somebody, even if you roll a natural 20. Like, it's just not. But if you roll, like, a natural one, and then you roll another natural one... Like, I'm pretty sure that's what happened to Nate. His freaking crossbow exploded, and he had to fix it.
Yes. Yeah. But it happened to me with my trident as well.
That's and your trident blew up. Yeah. But like that's the thing that I like doing, and I think it's just funny that there's like I don't do the critical hits, the extra round or losing a round. And the main reason I don't do it is because I remember in Strixhaven one time, Astra rolled a 1, and I was like, I rolled a 1, fuck. And I'm just standing there, and then, you know, halfway through the freaking combat, I'm like, wait, I have the lucky feat. I could just re-roll this. What the fuck?
Yeah, it creates a, you know, ideally it's supposed to be like you're kind of like, and I don't know, it can fuck you real quick. But it can help you really good, too. I guess there's that, so.
So, what would happen, for say, if I had Saphira out there who has the alert feat? She cannot be surprised.
Yeah, it would be fine. You would just that natural one wouldn't affect you.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So alert feat would help out quite a bit with that.
Okay. Well, she's gonna keep the alert feat. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Much, but, yeah.
It's a great feat. It is a great feat.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm gonna keep observant, but I'm definitely keeping alert.
Observant's the one where you can read lips and stuff, and you get passive perception, if I remember right.
Yeah. It like makes your passive investigation and perception like +5, and then you can read lips. I'm just like, that's cool, and like it makes sense for her. I'm just not sure if it's what I'm going to do with it. But either way, there's that's one of the ones that we have a little bit of a difference on, and like one of the interesting ones that I'm looking at where it goes one person, then an enemy, then another person, then an enemy, and you get to choose who goes. I don't know if I like it because it's not built into the D&D framework. It's like, well, you just made initiative useless, which, I mean, nerf dexterity is all well and good, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true, because only dexterity is so stacked, and we've talked about that in the past, but yeah, it's I didn't mind it in the context of Lancer because it just worked for Lancer.
Yeah, because it was built into Lancer.
Yeah, the only thing you run into sometimes is that people have competing interests, you know?
Yeah.
So that, you know, like my guy was a sniper for Lancer, so he was good to just kind of hang back and wait his turn, you know?
Yeah.
But if you're someone who needs to get that AoE effect out, you're probably going to go first usually.
Yeah. I've got a question. Since we're on the issue of initiative at the moment, how do you feel about? I feel like this would be something that I would allow, but no one's ever asked, and like I'm looking at like a list of things that I do, like this might be a fun thing. But like the one where players can like lower their initiative, where they can like if they roll higher, they can put themselves lower.
Yeah, I like it and I'm for it. Like someone could bargain that for me. You know, like, I'd be fine as a DM to do it. The only thing is it'd have to be consistently through that entire combat. Yeah.
No, you can't go back up. Once you lower your initiative, you're like you set your initiative at the beginning of combat, and that's what it is. Like you can't raise and lower it. Otherwise, but like, because the alternative to that would be the ready actions. Like, oh yeah, you want to move here, then ready action and do that after this other person's turn. You could do that every single time, but if you know you want to go after another person, I feel like saying like, oh, I'll just go after this person. Like, the thought process of initiative is that you are aware of what's happening and you react quickly enough. And like, I think that holding back your turn shouldn't necessarily be like disallowed. I think it's fine.
Yeah, and we actually did it for the long road off stream, where I can't remember who it was, but someone wanted to like do.
I remembered it happening, which is why I brought it up. Like this is something that I feel like. Well,
because they did some combination attacks. And
yeah.
And so it made sense. I was like, yeah, that checks.
Well, it also makes sense because those two characters are played by the same person.
Yeah, also makes sense. And like, you know, and for Mass Effect, I just have them always on the same initiative. I did some home brewing with Mass Effect with like, hey, you get 2 actions but only 1 bonus action and only 1 reaction for both those characters.
Yeah. I mean, that's still really powerful.
Yeah, it was just a way of like, okay, I know you have this character design, I have to give you some limits, you know?
Yeah. Like, it's a cool character design. You don't want to say no. You want to, like, make it work. And, you know, 2 actions is really good. It's really good. But, you know, yeah, there has to be some kind of detriment there, because otherwise you're just more powerful than other players.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we kind of hinted a little bit about just the idea of crit systems. Let's go ahead and just... that's usually a pretty big conversation. So let's dive into that.
Oh, yes, our differentiating crit systems.
Yeah, and both of us hate the original.
The original fucking sucks.
Yeah. And, you know, I've seen... Because, you know, I watch a lot of different podcasts and stuff like that. I've seen people interpret the original differently. For example, Mercer, he does this thing where... Because the words double the dice, right? Has to me always been you double the number that you rolled on the dice, right? So for example, I rolled 2d4 and I rolled a 7 total. That 7 becomes a 14, then add modifier, right?
Well, that is not what it means.
So that was interesting. He also does the double the dice can be that, or double the dice can mean you roll 4d4 instead of 2d4.
You roll twice as many dice. That is how it is intentionally meant to be done, I believe.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. And it's like, oh, okay, that's a weird, not a weird way, but he essentially is taking that word double the dice and taking it as you can choose which you want to roll 4d4, great, or do you want to just double the number you rolled on that?
Yeah, it really is just the idea of like, oh, people like rolling dice, we'll have them roll more dice. From a baseline like thought process, it makes perfect sense. Like oh yeah, more dice, people love rolling more dice. You know, whatever.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and talk about our 2 camps of thought on here. So I'll start with mine. Mine is a double everything. So essentially, if you have 2d4 damage plus 5 modifier, right? And you rolled 7 on the dice, you would add the 5 to it, so that becomes, what, a 12, right? 12 times 2 equals 24. You double everything, including the modifier. The idea behind that is it gives you the highest possibility of a big attack, but not the higher average than yours. So like it has because you double the modifier, you have the highest possibility, but it's not guaranteed. With that being said, one of the reasons why I do it and I like it is just really quick and simple to teach to people as well. If I just said, hey, get all your damage, times it by 2. You know, it's kind of nice for a new player, which I've had to do a lot with like my parents and my family for everything like that. So it's been easy in that sense. So that's my style. Andrew, go ahead and talk about yours.
Well, my style is similar, but there's a little bit of a difference. And basically what mine does is I also include the modifiers for whatever I'm doing. So basically, if we're taking, what was your example, 2d4 plus 5?
Yeah, 2d4 plus 5.
So if you do 2d4 plus 5, that maximum you can get there is 13?
It would be, what, 8 plus 5, 13. Yep.
Yeah. So, like, you take 13, like, that's the lowest you can have, and then you roll your damage anyway, and then you just add that to the maximum. So you can roll maximum again and end up getting 26 damage, but the lowest you can get is 13. And the reason I do that is because if you roll a critical hit, the worst feeling in the world, and this is possible with your system, is that you can roll lower than your maximum if you roll badly on your critical hit. And like with mine, it's not possible to do that. You always do more damage on a critical hit than you would have in a normal hit.
Yeah, so a lowest of mine, like just so we can do it, 2d4 would be a 1 plus 1 plus 5, so that's what, 7 times 2 would be 14, and then the lowest on yours would be 15, I believe. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, because it's plus 5, right? So the lowest you could get on mine would be 13 plus 5 plus 2. So like 19.
At least you haven't told us this way. You don't double the modifier in yours.
The modifier is applied twice.
Oh, we haven't been doing that, just so you know.
Well, you should.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this, I have been.
Yeah, we never double the modifier. We've always done like, so to do that same math example, it would be 2d4 max, which is 8, right? Plus, I would say the minimum.
Plus
right?
5, we did.
Plus 5, right? That makes it 13. And then add in another, let's say you rolled in 1s on those 2d4.
Yeah.
Then that would be
7.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're saying you would add the 5 on top of that, making it minimum 20.
Yes. You should add the bonus twice.
Okay.
Because it is the maximum amount of damage you can do, which includes your modifier, and then you roll again.
Okay, but also add modifier in again.
Yes, and then you just roll. You just roll normally. Just roll normally, and then you add those two numbers together.
Okay, yeah. We've definitely been not adding modifier twice.
I feel like I would have to go back and look, but like I feel like I've been instructing you guys to do it. Maybe it's just maybe I've missed it. But either way, even if you don't add the modifier, like it's still at the end of the day a higher average.
Yeah. That was the difference I remember from ours, is that you had the higher average, I just had the higher possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But and so it's worked out great because you have a higher average, a crit usually feels like a crit. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Kind of thing.
That's both of them accomplish the same goal of bigger number because of damage.
Yeah.
Like because crit, higher number. Like that's the baseline, and I feel like both of them do the job. It's fine.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of, I'm trying to think of like other people's takes on these. A lot of people have done, I've seen people like, you just automatically take the maximum. Like you don't get to double anything, you just automatically get the maximum, which just feels like a less impact to it. Yeah.
Lame.
So there's other takes on it. Crit systems also, not by raw standard, but can be applied to ability checks based on the DM. And so like, for example, you don't do naturals on ability checks. I do naturals within reason is what I call it. So like, like I'm not going to have you roll for an impossible task, if that makes sense. So
apparently I'm not going to have a choice once the new rules come out.
They're going back and forth on that, so I'm curious where they landed on it.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, because I think they were just calling them D20 checks. Everything was like a D20 check.
Yeah. So like now they're saying, if the D20 check crits, there's a critical fail and a critical success for like everything. I don't know how I feel about that. Like it feels a little bit like, yeah. I mean, either way, you can game rule it. You can house rule it to whatever you want, because that's the entire subject of the conversation. So
yeah, and and honestly, it's littered all throughout the books. Is as a DM, choose what works best for your table. You know what I mean? Like do what you guys want.
Yeah.
Yeah, so crit systems, like for me, like for ability checks, and you and I have talked about it, if you said, like, I want to jump to the moon, I'm not going to let you roll to jump to the moon, I'm going to let you roll to jump as high as you can, right? And we'll talk about what that means. That way, a nat 20 doesn't allow you to jump to the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all within reason, kind of thing. Yeah. There's another one I want to talk about was potions.
I'm looking at the potions one now as well, yeah.
And so what's cool about that is you and I have agreed on potions throughout playing. You added a new thing that I'm interested in and possibly adding into our games as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the potions that you and I have always agreed on is it sucks to waste an action to drink a potion.
Yes.
So we just said, you know what, fuck it, we're going to Baldur's Gate it. Bonus action, drink potion, right?
I did this before Baldur's Gate, but yes.
Yes, you did, yeah.
Not to be a hipster about it, but I came up with it first.
I did too, but I only did it because Critical Role was doing it already. So I got it from Critical Role.
I just did it because in my freaking 15 years of DMing, I got tired of people never using potions because they were like, an action is too much. And like just make it a bonus action so that people actually fucking use them. Yeah.
We definitely like potions when it comes to pillars because they are guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Pillars is another reason why I'm like, use potions, guys. Go to your alchemist, make them get you potions, because then you won't blow up whenever you cast a spell.
Yeah. What we've also done is we've said, it's an action to give it to somebody else. Like you can essentially force feed, right?
Yes.
A potion. What you did this most recent, I think it was one of our most recent games actually for Roy. I think it was Roy.
It was for Pillars.
Was it Pillars? It was literally our most recent game we played.
Yes.
You did this thing that I saw online, but I hadn't done it yet, and you talked about it. And I didn't like it at first because I didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being hesitant during the game. I was like, I don't fucking know it. Is he trying to make it an action now or whatever? But then you explained it as still a bonus action to drink it. But if you want, what was the new rule? If you use an action to full effect?
Yes. The action. This is the idea. Is like if you want to use a potion as a bonus action, it just rolls as a potion. And then if you want to use a potion as a full action, or as in like just use your action to drink a potion, you get the full healing or the full effect of that potion. So for any potions that have a thing where you roll a dice, which isn't all of them, some of them don't do that. But if there is a potion that makes you roll dice in order to determine its effect, you can, as a full action, max out the dice.
So putting that in the context, a common healing potion, which is 2d4 plus 2, you would automatically get 10, right? As if you took an action.
If you took a full action.
Yeah, if you use a bonus action, you still can take it, but you have to roll 2d4 and add 2 to it, right?
Yes, you have to actually roll the dice. And the reason why this was such a big thing is because the person who is using it, Adi, she has a special belt that lets her do potions at an increased rate.
Yeah.
So she can take a potion herself literally for free. Doesn't even require a bonus action because that's the magical item that she has. And the contention came when she was like, okay, I want to use the belt to give it to somebody else, and blah, and it was like the whole freaking thing. And that's where the contention came from. But yeah, the idea behind this is to just drink a potion, to just quickly drink a potion. Maybe you don't get all of it. Maybe you spill some because you're doing it so quickly as a bonus action. It just doesn't, it works as intended, and then with a full action, you get the full benefit. And I think that's just, one, it takes the anxiety out of rolling for recovering health, which I think is good, especially because I've made healing so, dangerous in Pillars of Creation specifically.
Yeah.
So it was really just me trying to help, and it kind of backfired a little bit because it caused a little bit of confusion. But I think once everyone understands what I'm getting at, it'll be, if not used, at least understood.
No, I mean, I plan on using it because I liked it once I understood it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, imagine you, I'm thinking late game, right? And you spent the money on a supreme healing.
Yeah.
Could you imagine rolling all ones?
Yeah, that's another reason why I was saying that.
Expensive fucking item. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
This is not 50 gold we're talking about. This is substantial.
Yeah, it's you're probably thinking 500k, maybe thousands. Yeah, for Supreme. Oh yeah, for Supreme you're talking about thousands of gold, and then you roll badly on it, and it feels like shit.
Yeah. So I like it. I'm for it, and the cost is already there. You are using time. You're using an action to do it. So it's not like it's unbalanced, because let's be honest, what we can do with an action can be disgusting. So, you are taking the choice to do that rather than to attack someone, use a spell.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like it. I plan on using it. I'll have to, the next game that we play in person will be Strix, so I'll make sure I introduce that then. Some stuff that we sing with Strix that I've liked doing was the drinking, the drunkenness.
The drunkenness, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I got that one from a Kickstarter I was doing from Valda's Spire of Secrets, it's called. And they had this sub book, it came with different modules and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the books was the Taverns and Tankards. And it had this drunkenness scale that kind of was built like an exhaustion scale, a 0 through 10 kind of idea. And it scales higher the more drunkenness you get, and then as a DM you can play with the effects. I play with exhaustion a little bit too sometimes. Where I'm hey, exhaustion, maybe the first thing that should be happening is your speed gets affected, right? Rather than mental ability. So you can play with those kind of ideas and play with the order of them, and then you can choose what you're drinking gives you more drunkenness or less drunkenness. I didn't create the system, I've just been modifying essentially what that Kickstarter had. I've enjoyed it, and now I've kind of changed it to not just drunkenness, but I don't know what the word for it is, but it's I should probably think of a word soon.
Inebriation.
Yeah, inebriation, because I'm also attaching drugs to it as well now.
Yeah.
Because drugs happen in games, so let's talk about the effects of that, and maybe just trying to solidify it into one branch rather than two separate branches.
It especially happens in Strixhaven because two of our party members are little fucking weed stoners.
Yep.
So that's
been a fun one to do. I know a lot of different groups have their own forms of things like that. And it doesn't have to be drinking. It could be a different scale. We were playing with a fear one that Mary was working on with you, right? Yeah. I've seen groups do...
I can't take a lot of credit for that. I helped with it, but that's Mary's baby.
Yeah, that was definitely... And from what I last talked to her about it, she was still working on it, too.
Yeah.
I've seen people do, what's it called when you're, corruption? A corruption scale?
Yes.
So that was kind of cool. I saw Mercer do that with Percy. That was kind of fun little arc.
Yeah, that's like a Call of Cthulhu thing. I don't know if you've ever actually read the rule books for Call of Cthulhu, but there's a lot of that kind of stuff in that particular rule set.
Yeah, and what I've been doing lately, because I've been so bored during the summer, I've been looking through the DM's book, and I've just been looking at the variant rules, and they have a form of corruption one there. They also have like a Paragon one as well. You know, so that's kind of cool.
We always go by the grid. Which is weird too, because like you think about it and like, oh, that makes a fireball into a cube. That's not what a fireball is supposed to be, but I mean that's how it works in the game.
Yeah, and like the idea of a 3D effect, right, versus a 2D effect. Yeah,
like it's just you're trying to add curve. It's like not even a 3D effect. It's like it's like a Euclidean versus non-Euclidean geometry type of thing. Like you're trying to add curves to a thing that is only in straight lines.
Yeah. I also saw that hex was a variant as well. Like some people do hexes instead, which just changes more of scale than anything else.
There are some people who really, really like hexagons.
Yeah.
Like they really like them. I'm like, it's cool, I like them, but like 2 hexagons diagonally is so far. It's so much farther than like what you would usually think. Like it's just maybe it's not that far. It just feels like it's a lot farther. But like, I mean, I've played on hexagons. It's fine.
Yeah, we did it a little bit early. I think it might have been right before you joined with the long road stuff.
Did you?
Yeah, we had Heroscape tiles. Because I'm a huge like Heroscape collector.
Yeah.
So, like,
okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if I'm going into a game and like, oh, we're doing hexes, I'm not gonna be like, oh, blasphemy, and like, you know, flipping the table over and leaving. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else do I have on our list? Oh, harvesting. We've both done a version of harvesting, somewhat similar to each other. I had a couple books I've looked at. One of them was the Kibbles book, right? Kibbles
that's the one I'm trying to use, but I feel like crafting, and this is just a problem with TTRPGs in general, is that there's so much stuff you have to keep track of, and like I gave you guys this like cool like geo-powered like moat of energy, and I'm like, yeah, they can use this to like make whatever they want. They can like make a weapon or some armor, and you guys still have it. It's been like 6 months maybe.
Yeah, that was the one we got from the demonic guys, right?
Yeah, you got it from the Mage's Tower because you killed the big dragon guy.
The Geo Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah, the wizard who got taken over by Alep, who got sucked into the fissure that he made in the elemental plane of Earth and got basically transformed into a Geo Dragon. Yeah. Fun times. That's all. But yeah, you broke your spear.
Yeah.
And your triple spear.
Yeah.
And like I gave you like all these cool little things, and like sometimes you guys kill other things and you collect their remains. And like honestly, I feel like it's just difficult for them to keep track of all the things they have, because like I'm pretty sure there's a couple of magical items that that you guys have not used or forgot that you have. Like for instance, the one that comes straight up to mind is one of the things you selected at the very beginning was a thing called the Knockin' Boots, which literally are shoes that have knock enchanted on them. And I can think of several times where you guys have come up to like a closed door or like some kind of, and you're just like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like clearly, I'm not gonna say, hey, you have these items, because that's not the point.
Yeah, but I don't know who has them.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's my point. Is like I don't know who has them either, but I know I gave them to you, and I know you guys selected them because on my little checklist of magical items you could choose from, it's checked off. So I know somebody has them. I don't know who. I want to say Whisper because that's the joke, is that Whisper's kind of horny and they're called Knockin' Boots. But but that's my point. Like it's hard enough to keep track of like all the items and stuff, especially because we only play each particular campaign once a month at best at this point, which hopefully we'll have to work on that, but it's not here nor there. It's just like one more thing that people have to keep track of that like I can understand if they lose track of it.
Yeah, because we usually film 2 sessions in each, unless we run out of time or whatever.
Well, yeah, but even then, we still only play it once
a month before you see them again.
Yeah, it's 2 sessions, but we only play it we play it all at once. So
yeah, Yeah, I was gonna say one of the things I noticed like is, and you know, it depends on the campaign, right? So like, you know, for pillars, a magic has consequence kind of campaign. Magic items might be fewer than Strix, where magic is you're at a fucking magical university.
I think you guys have noticed that there's not a whole lot of magical things in Pillars of Creation, and it's been a point of contention a couple times.
But it also makes sense with the campaign, right?
Yes.
Like you know, I designed Strix to be highly magical, right? So it makes sense. You know, Mass Effect, I'm giving you guys programs kind of quickly because it's a shorter campaign. Roy, we've gotten stuff because it's a shorter campaign, right? You know, so you know the process of adding those items, you know, is different.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say with pillars is that even just certain characters are more prone. Like Addie's a hoarder, right? I think Kat's a hoarder, but like you know, so like magic items, I think she has like the jar of dirt of dust, you know,
the jar of dirt that you guys got from Harry, and basically it turned into a dust of it's either dust of Leave Without Trace or dust of the one where you actually use it to find things.
Yeah,
I don't recall which one it is off the top of my head.
It's the Leave Without Trace one.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and you know she has that little gelatinous guy. It's just a little magical being.
Yeah, love that thing.
Pine Sol, right? Yeah.
Pine Sol, the miniature gelatinous cube. Love that shit.
Yeah, and so like you have you know characters like that are more prone to magic items because of their, you know, one, either the player, or two, the way they hold them. Like I have that, like as a paladin, right? I have that sensor of the air elemental. Most likely my guy wouldn't keep that. He'd probably give it to the cleric or something like that. You know, especially since I got the sword that has the ice and the fire. Yeah,
you got two pretty good items there.
Yeah, so like, and you know, the whole reason I got the sword was because, not Whisper, but Dez wasn't going to use the sword. It's like, oh fuck, I'll give you my silver sword, and then I'll take that sword. So. Yeah,
and that was a very specific situation too, because in Pillars of Creation, the world itself is so old that the actual fabric of magic is kind of fraying, and that's why all that crazy shit is happening. Like, not to spoil anything, like I'm pretty sure you guys have gleaned that like something bad is happening to the way that the worlds are stitched together, and therefore whenever you try and pull energy from a different plane, shit goes badly, or you know, potentially.
Yeah.
But that particular area was like, you guys didn't I'm gonna peel back the curtain just a little bit, but there were some information bits in that temple that you guys missed because you guys just didn't find it, or like a check was missed, or you guys just didn't go to like a specific area.
Yeah.
The reason, like, those magic items were there specifically because they were collecting them to feed to the Draco Lich. Like, you're not going to find like these stockpiles of magical weapons like that unless somebody is actively doing it at the time, because most magical items are either like frayed to the point where they're no longer actually magical, or like they've been destroyed through some other means. Like, it's such a, not a low magic world, but like the Tolkien world where it used to be super magical and now it's not quite as magical as it used to be. And like you kind of see that all the time, because whenever you guys are traveling, I'm always like, oh, you see these ruins, you see the like some semblance of like an old civilization, you see like it's all over the place.
Yeah, and that's I love lore reasons for mechanics and for, you know, those kind of things. Like, you know, I'm thinking about, because I'm building the Jersinger stuff right now, and for me, I'm looking at like, okay, we're in this, you know, primal age. That means magic items may not be everywhere, but maybe people are going to start making them more. You know what I mean? As people are able to tap into these primal energies and tap into more divine inspiration and eventually more arcane inspiration. You know, we're going to see a time when, you know, these demigods will be wielding magical weapons that someone's going to want at some point when they ascend, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's cool when lore influences those kind of things. Another thing I wanted to talk about here was, and we haven't really had to deal with it on stream, and honestly we haven't done, I mean, I already know how I'm going to deal with it because I've given a lot of thought about this, but death. You know, how we handle death. And like, for me, I've always, you know, I've been pretty upfront with you guys that I don't mind if your character goes down. Like, I think that consequences are real, you know what I mean? And I think that it's good for the plot sometimes, right? And for development. However,
well, you know, not to spoil anything that happened in the latest Roy, but yeah, like we've talked about it a little bit before. Like one of our characters almost died. The only reason they didn't die is because I mistakenly thought that a 10 on a death saving throw was a failure, and apparently it's not.
Yeah, and that one just aired by the way this past week.
Yeah, so like that. So go check it out.
Yeah, I did a lot of sound effect stuff on that one. I'm really starting to add in Foley shit into it now.
Nice, nice.
But with death, I've tried to be transparent with you guys, even though it hasn't happened. That if this bothers you, come talk to me, and we will find a way. Right? You know, we'll find a way, most likely plot driven, right? And in which things can be redeemed and things can be fixed, right? Because I like the idea of making that an arc. That sounds cool to me, you know? But sometimes we as players go, I really like this character, but I'm okay with what just happened, right? Like, you know, for me, if Jonas did a couple times, right? Quite a few times, where he's almost gone down. Like, he hasn't, like, hit the death side, but he's gone down, you know? But, like, if Jonas goes down, even though there's stuff I would like to explore with him, right?
He almost did.
Yeah, like, that fire thing, taking down what he thought was taking down Butcher, and he did, right? Until, like, everything. But, like, that would have been okay death for him, you know, because he did something in order to protect an orb and to, you know, to, like, kind of do a thing. That's a Jonas death, right?
For sure.
And so, you know, like, I'm okay with those kind of things, and each player is different in how they handle those characters, but I think if the right situation, you know, happens, I think any player might be up for it, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like since we're talking about this now, and like Mary was very upset when Jonas was doing this, and it's fine. It's like being upset when a character dies. That is kind of the point. You want everyone to be like attached to these characters. Like that's the point.
Yeah.
So if something bad happens to them, you want to be like, oh no, this is terrible. So like be upset about it, and then you know, Nate was a little bit upset before about Raleigh almost dying.
Yeah. And it was interesting because, you know, Raleigh, what happened there, it was this, we couldn't do anything. You know what I mean? But we couldn't. You know, like, if the opportunity provided itself, we would have been able to do it. You would have given us the opportunity.
Absolutely.
But what happened was kind of outside everybody's control. It was literally just the roll of the dice.
Well, another thing, and to tie this back into the subject of the house rules that we're using, I actually use the ones where I roll the death saves. Like, nobody knows if she's making the saves or not. So, like, they don't know, like, oh, maybe she'll stabilize on her own. Maybe she's one roll away from death. They didn't know until they actually got there. And then, you know, luckily I told them what the death saves were, and then John was like, oh, that's not a failure. I'm like, oh, well, then you get there in time, and we go through this whole thing, and Mary actually was pretty cool about it. Yeah. Nate was a bit more upset.
But she was contemplating the idea of it, and that was, you know, it was cool to see that, okay, like, I think we as players are getting, because we like the role-playing so much, we're open to the idea in the right moment, you know?
Yeah, I feel like it's tough to ask somebody to completely inhabit a character who has, like, this big, especially, like you were saying, like, the romantic connection to someone.
Yeah.
And then, like, okay, now let's roleplay that person dying. That's, if you're actually, like, in it, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, so I understand. And, like, I'm not, like, it's not a contentious part. It's like, oh, okay, we can just take a pause. Everyone can, you know, take a breath, calm down. It's not real. It's just a game. All right, continue.
But it's powerful, right? You know, it's cool how much power it has. Yeah.
Hopefully, man. I think that's what makes the role-playing part of the games, like, critical. Like, a lot of people just don't like doing that. Like, they just want to come in and they want to play, like, a combat simulation. Like, you're missing out on a lot of things that tabletop role-playing games can do if you take out the role-playing.
Yeah, and we, you know, I think we got better before we even started streaming, but once we started recording, it really put a new influence on us in role-playing, and it's just cool. It's been so much fun, you know, to do it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Before I get into other ones that I've heard about and stuff like that. Oh, actually, I have one more thing about death. One of the things that my mechanic that I wanted to use for Long Road that I would probably use in most of my campaigns, if it makes sense, is the trial system of revival. You know, So, like, if it's a revivify, it's immediate, it happens kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's, like, past that minute and we're using a resurrection or we're using something like that, there's essentially, like, does the person want to come back, first of all, right?
Yeah.
And then 2, what can you do to bring that person back? You know, not just the spell itself.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that gives a little bit more weight to death by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I was thinking about, too.
Yeah, makes sense.
Before we move on to things that I've heard about that I haven't used, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Heard about that we haven't used. Yes, I want to talk about something that I feel like everyone should do. Every single game should do this, and that is giving your first level characters a feat.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I think that is the best fucking house rule we have, because it just opens up so many options for character creation that they don't make you, and like, you can do that if you do like, oh yeah, very human, just do that, tee lol.
Yeah.
Like, that's so boring. And like, yeah, it takes a little bit away of what makes humans like versatile, but you can add shit to humans. Like, oh, they get all their feats, well then humans get, you know, another ASI. Fucking there it is. Here you go. Now humans are even more of a jack of all trades than they are now. Yeah. But no, I think that's something that every single game should have, because it's so much fun.
Yeah, I love it. You know, we've done it with everything we've done so far.
Yes.
And it's just so good. It gives, especially if you are to do the first level, but even if you're playing third level to start, it gives you a little bit more of that character's presence and personality. Because feats, in my opinion, bring a little bit more personality to the character.
Absolutely. And this is coming from somebody who started playing in 3.0 when, like, you had tons of feats. If you were a fighter, you had 7 feats by the time you were like level 10. It was crazy. And then you know, going to 4th, which we don't talk about, and then going to 5th, and now you have like 1 per 4 times if you don't want an ability score improvement. Like, that's crazy to me. It's so few. It's so hard to get an identity for your character, especially because in 5th edition, everything is like so set for you. Like, oh, you want your class and then your subclass, and these are what you get for that, and that's it.
Yeah.
The only way to customize at that point is like what weapon you're using and what spells you have. That's the only customization you can do for your character. I'm just like, that's so lame.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I've liked buying on like DM's Guild and different things, is like finding homebrew feats that people have made and be like, okay, yeah, these are options that you could choose from.
Well, I've seen some horror stories about homebrew feats, but
yeah, they can be awful and stuff like that. But you can get some interesting ones. You know, I think it's Whisper, or maybe it's Whisper or Raleigh. They have a homebrew feat with their sword, like the way they use their sword or whatever. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And that's fine. Like, and I looked it over and I was like, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, as long as you talk to your DM, it's usually, I mean, it can be fine. You know,
always talk to your DM before you give anything to anybody that's homebrew. Yeah. And even if it's not, even if it's from like a book that they might not have read, you should talk to them about it.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you think about for the people who are playing Raw before Tasha's came out and like those kind of things. Tasha's did some mixes up.
Tasha's gave everybody some cool stuff.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that like you just double check.
I wish they had added the everyone gets a feat at first level for Tasha's. I think that's just the best fucking rule we have at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, ones that we've seen but haven't used yet. Do you have one that you're thinking of?
Yeah, I wrote down 2, and so one of them I've heard before, and I thought was kind of cool. I just never done it and wanted to pick your brain on it. And one of them I saw on a DM's resources, like I was reading the blog from people who DM, and they did something, and people were giving them hell on it. I was like, you know what? I don't do it, but I see why you do it, right? But the first one I talk about is called the Devil's Bargain.
Okay.
And so essentially, if you fail to check, like any type of D20 check, you can make a deal with the devil, aka the DM, and essentially they will let you pass. Like, you get to succeed. Like, it could be a natural 20 success on that. However, they get to hold a favor, and so anytime they can throw a natural 1 into the wrench from a D20.
Okay.
So the idea behind it is that there are things that matter a lot to us, right? So like, I need to succeed on this. So can I make a deal with the devil? And it's like, yeah, go ahead, you get to succeed. And then that DM goes, I'm gonna fuck you over now. You know, like I get to hold on to this, you know, and use it at a time that matters. And I just thought it was interesting. I've never done it, but I thought it was kind of cool, kind of fun.
I personally would not do that, only because there are so many items and class features and things that can happen that affect the luck of what you're doing. That making a house rule that at any point you can decide, I guess not decide, but the DM has to agree to it, I assume. Yeah, they have to they have to agree to the bargain. Yeah, I just don't know if I would ever agree to that, because I really enjoy the let the dice fall how they may. Like if you like, honestly, failing a check is sometimes the most interesting thing that can happen. Yep. So like, but like, even in those interesting times, the person who's failing the check would be like, oh, I don't want that. I don't want that to happen. But like, from a narrative standpoint, it might be way more interesting. Like, so many more things can happen because you failed that particular check than you succeeded. And like, honestly, I don't do a lot of things where like, it's if you fail this check, you just fucking die. Yeah. So if you are a DM that does that kind of thing, I can see accepting that kind of deal. And if I did decide I was going to incorporate that house rule, you guys would be going into a lot more deadly traps, and like a lot more things would be happening, just because like, oh, they have this mechanic that I can, you know, make them succeed. But then, you know, one time later, like a lesser thing happens where like, oh, you're trying to just attack, and there's a real, not a whole big consequence. Like, oh yeah, you roll a 1 because LOL. Yeah, I find myself in the indifferent form of it. Like, I like it, I don't like it. You know what I mean? If I was a player with someone who was doing it, it wouldn't bother me. You know? Yeah. I don't know if I see myself doing it unless like I was doing a really like 9 Hells themed campaign. Yeah. And like I wanted to make myself like as the DM kind of like the devil kind of the whole time. That would be kind of a fun little play to do it. Yeah. Or like a one-shot kind of idea. Yeah. But I don't see myself putting it in the long road, or I don't see myself putting it in Mass Effect or Strix, right? Yeah. The only thing that I can think of, and this is actually a really good tie-in, is the I don't remember what Brendan Lee Mulligan calls it. It's like an emphasis dice, I believe it's called. Where like it's basically a D20, but there are 3 20s and 3 1s. Okay. So it's a little bit more like the coin flip mechanic that you have in Mass Effect for the Vanguard, where like it's called zero sum, where like it's either a critical success or a critical miss, and those are the only 2 things that can happen. And I like this idea that he has, where in super critical situations or like high stress situations, like I think it's like 18, 19, 20 is critical success, and then 1, 2, and 3 are critical failures. Okay, that's kind of cool. Yes, it gives you a higher % chance to do something really freaking crazy, but equally enough chances to have you basically fall on your face and potentially die. Is that from Dimension 20 or? Yeah, that's Brendan Lee Mulligan is Dimension 20. Okay, yeah, because I just started watching it and I'm in love with watching what they're doing. Yeah, I'm watching the school one right now. Which is they have fun. A lot of really fun stuff. Yeah. But yeah, that's the one that I would think of. Any other ones that you've seen but have not? Yeah, so this other one I want to talk about was one that like this person was getting a lot of hate for doing it, but I accepted their reasons. Not that I would use it, but they are doing a very gritty, realistic campaign, right? Kind of think, you know, like kind of Game of Thrones, not high magic, those kind of things. They are, whenever you level up, you have to get training from someone of that class. So, for example, their justification is that, like, I don't just magically know how to learn spells, like a new level of spell. I sought training from a wizard. And my negative feedback to that was a lot of like, well, you know, sometimes your campaign just doesn't allow you to go to a slow grind like that. And then 2, you know, I just don't know if I fully agree with it because, you know, let's say a wizard. A wizard is technically probably always studying their spell book, you know? So it's just interesting. I thought it was an interesting idea that I would, if I was to use it, I would probably tweak, like, you know, maybe every 4 levels or maybe only when you multi-class you have to do that, right?
But yeah, what's your thoughts on that? So essentially, every time you level, you have to spend. I think he said like a week of training with someone of that class.
There was a thing in 3rd edition that addressed this kind of thing. So
I know they've been DMing for like 20 years. That would make sense. So.
Yep, there it is. Back in the day, if you wanted to multi-class, you would have to find somebody to teach you how to do that. So like let's say if you were a bard and you wanted to take a few levels in rogue, if there wasn't a rogue in your party to teach you how to do that, you would have to do some kind of like a downtime thing to find somebody to allow you to learn how to do those things.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I can think of that would make sense for me. Like if you're learning how to do something and you have no idea how to do it, it's not part of your class, you're multi-classing, you're doing something completely different, then yes, you have to find someone to teach you how to do it. If it's just your class, like a class that you're just like, the entire point of the leveling system is like the experience you're getting is you learning how to do your class.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense for me to have an XP system and then also require training, because that's the entire point of the experience system, is that you are training.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. And that, what you mentioned with the multi-class is kind of where I actually find myself in that camp. Mm-hmm. I kind of did it with Long Road, you know, when the character Kira was trying to learn how to become that homebrew arcane tinkerer. Mm-hmm. You know, she had to spend time with Clank, right, to learn how to do that kind of skill. At the very least, I want a lore reason for multi-class.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense. You know,
and to be fair, when I multi-classed from Warlock into Paladin with Saphira,
yeah,
there was no one, like there was a Paladin around, but I don't know how that would even work. Like, how do you train someone to be a Paladin? That doesn't really make any sense.
I don't see Sam teaching.
No.
You know.
No, Sam's
got many strengths, but teaching's probably not the...
Well, it's just such a different motivation that they have, because Sam is out there trying to like protect people and be like this shining bastion because he's gone through so much loss that he wants to prevent more loss. Like, that makes perfect sense. And Saphira is the opposite end of that spectrum of paladins, where like she views these undead and lycanthropes as like abominations and blights upon something that she just has deemed beautiful, and she wants to basically purify it. That's not the same type of paladin. There's no way for him to train her how to do that. Yeah,
and I don't think I ever did this with you, but like the rethinking myself as a DM now, the way I would approach that was probably to approach you with a vision or a dream from your archfey. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
giving you this mission or this purpose, and that drives you as more of a paladin way, right? Because, you know, in a way, Warlock and Paladin can go well together. You know, the idea of power coming from something else, right? So yeah,
it's not quite as seamless as a Cleric Paladin, but you know.
But I can see the transition still. But yeah, I like some kind of lore reason. You know, Draco went from Ranger, and then he took a couple levels in Wizard. And the whole reason was because he took a lot of lessons in school lessons when he was a kid, you know? And so, like, as a drow, he was trained religiously, he was trained in a melee sense, then he was also trained in a magical sense. And so he was just pulling on from those, you know, he was only like level 2 wizard, I think. You know, so like he was just pulling on those basic ideas that he learned from his schooling. Right,
and, you know, elves in general are considered to be the most magical race, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Like, the more, at least, like, the more, like, purely magical, and not that things that have to do with, like, specific things. Like, I know halflings have their luck, which you could consider to be magical, but it's not specified to be magical in the text. It's just, they're just kind of lucky. It's crazy how that works, right? That's fucking crazy. Whereas elves are like, oh yeah, you just get some spells. Like, okay.
Yep. It is innate.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where if I were going to do a required training, it would only be for a multi-class that doesn't have any actual lore reasons that you would be able to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's just how I feel about it. But yeah, like, if to train in the actual class that you are, that's nonsense. To me, personally.
Yeah, like, and that was a lot of what people were saying too, and those were the points I was agreeing with them on too, is because they're saying, hey, you have been training this, you've been fighting, you've been doing this.
Yeah.
You know, and specifically the example they used was a wizard, and like a wizard is studying their spell book. They've been learning spells but haven't been able to do it, and now they can. You know, like
yeah, absolutely. Like that's like I said, that is what XP is. XP is experience.
Yeah.
Like it's in the name.
Yep. Well, that was the last of mine, unless you have anything else.
No, I think I'm pretty good. There are other ones that I want to talk about, but we could probably fill a whole other freaking episode with those, so I'll save them for next time.
Sounds good to me. Well, I think that was a pretty good talk on a very good ramble on many things, house ruled and homebrewed.
I want to say, we didn't ramble nearly as much as we usually do. We definitely digressed a couple of times, but it wasn't the complete fucking divergence that we normally go on. So props to us for rambling a little less.
Yeah. And dude, like I was making check marks on things we were talking about. Man, we hit quite a few topics too. Good for us.
Yeah. Good job, us.
Yeah.
Here's an inspiration dice.
It's those project management classes, you know?
Absolutely. We didn't even really touch on inspiration. Next time.
Next time, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us here at Tavern Ramblings. This is John and Andrew here from Lizards and Locations. Please check us out. We check out Lizards and Locations as well. We have a multitude of campaigns. We have one-shots. We have tons of things for you guys to check out. We come out usually, for the most part, weekly, right? So come and find us. With that being said, come find us next time when we do some more Tavern Ramblings.
Awesome. See you next time.